Carl Jung gave countless lectures. He wrote volumes of books. He sat with patients, spoke with scholars, and crossed paths with some of the greatest minds of his century. And yet, there was something he never said directly. Not in his lectures, not in interviews, not even in his most personal writings. At least, not in plain words. It was a truth too dangerous to hand over casually. One he left for the careful reader to piece together. One he wove into his work in fragments, disguised as metaphors, buried inside the language of myth and dreams. To Jung, the human mind was not a gentle place. It was a labyrinth. And inside that labyrinth lived a secret most people would rather never discover. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know it, you can't unknow it. It changes the way you look at yourself, at the people you love, at the world you thought you understood. It is this: you are not who you think you are. You're not the voice in your head. You're not the sum of your conscious memories. You're not even the personality you present to the world. All of that, your name, your opinions, your habits, your history, is a mask. And the real you, the part of you that makes your choices, pulls your strings, shapes your fate, it lives underground, hidden in what Jung called the unconscious. We like to believe we are the authors of our own lives, that the decisions we make are rational, logical, in line with our goals. But Jung saw something different in his decades of study, that most of what we do, most of who we are, is controlled by forces we cannot see, patterns we didn't choose, wounds we didn't heal, instincts older than our conscious mind. The unconscious is not just a storage room for forgotten memories. It's an active presence. It's alive. It works whether you acknowledge it or not. And here's the part that unsettled Jung most, and the part he never wrote as plainly as he could have. If you refuse to bring what's unconscious into the light, it will control you anyway. But it won't do it kindly. It will manipulate you from the shadows. It will shape your life in ways that feel like chance or bad luck. And you will call it fate. Think about that for a moment. Every bad habit you can't seem to break, every toxic relationship you keep going back to, every dream you abandoned before you even started. These aren't just random misfortunes. They are the fingerprints of the unconscious. They are the moments where your shadow, the part of you that holds all the traits you've denied or repressed, quietly took the wheel. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how disciplined you are. If you refuse to face the parts of yourself you've buried, they will run your life. This was Jung's private fear about humanity. Because in his time, psychology was still new. People thought the mind was something you could simply fix by talking. But Jung knew that talking wasn't enough. He knew that the real work required confronting the parts of yourself that disgust you, terrify you, or make you feel ashamed. And almost no one is willing to do that, because the shadow is not polite. It's not nice. It doesn't match the image you've worked so hard to present to the world. It's the part of you that's jealous of your best friend. The part of you that wants revenge more than forgiveness. The part of you that would betray your values if it got you what you wanted most. You hide it from others. You hide it from yourself. And yet it directs your life more than the conscious self you're so proud of. Jung's hidden warning was simple. Until you make peace with that part of yourself, you will always be at its mercy. But here's the twist, and the reason this secret feels dangerous. Most people don't actually want to know who they are. They think they do. They say they do. They might even read books about self-discovery or watch videos like this one. But when it comes down to it, they would rather live comfortably in a lie than uncomfortably in the truth. Because truth demands change, and change feels like death to the old self. Jung saw this again and again. The people who refused to confront their unconscious ended up acting out their shadow in destructive ways. They became trapped in cycles they didn't understand. They repeated the same mistakes in different forms, each time convincing themselves it was different this time. He compared it to a possession, not in the supernatural sense, but in the psychological one. A person can be possessed by their own unconscious mind. They can walk through life thinking they're free, when in reality, they're being moved by invisible strings tied to events, wounds, and fears they've never faced. And this is why Jung rarely stated this secret outright. Because if you tell someone they are not who they think they are, you strip away their illusion of control. Some people can handle that. Most cannot. But for those who can take this truth and survive the shock of it, the reward is something few will ever experience. Real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to finally choose consciously without the shadow pulling the strings. It's a freedom that comes with a cost, because once you see your shadow, you have no excuse left. You can't pretend anymore. You can't keep playing the same games without knowing you're doing it. And that's the reason most people will never hear this secret from a book or a lecture. It's something you have to arrive at yourself, through the hard, uncomfortable work of looking inward. This is what Jung was hinting at all along. Not that the unconscious is just a place for dreams and memories, but that it is you, more you than the person you think you are. And until you face it, it will keep shaping your life from the shadows. The question is, how much of your life so far has been yours? And how much has been the echo of something you refused to see? If you were to walk through your day today, you'd probably feel like you're making choices. You'd think, I decided what to wear. I decided what to eat. I decided who to talk to. And on the surface, you did. But beneath that surface, the unconscious is busy arranging things, often without your permission. Carl Jung noticed something strange about the patterns in his patients' lives. They kept ending up in the same situations, over and over, no matter how hard they tried to change. A man who grew up with a distant father kept working for bosses who ignored him. A woman who was betrayed in love kept falling for men who lied to her. A child who was humiliated at school kept finding ways to humiliate himself as an adult, subtly, but enough to keep the wound fresh. Jung saw this repetition as no accident. He called it psychological fate, and this fate wasn't being decided by the rational, conscious self. It was being orchestrated by the unconscious. The shadow doesn't show up in obvious ways. It doesn't announce itself and say, "Here I am, controlling your life." Instead, it wears disguises. It hides in your preferences, your type, your fears, your instincts. You might think you're avoiding pain, when in reality, you're circling right back to it. Think about relationships. How many people do you know who keep dating the same kind of person, even after saying they'll never do it again? From the outside, it looks irrational. Why would someone walk back into the same fire that burned them before? Jung's answer was unsettling. Because the shadow is trying to complete an old story. The unconscious is obsessed with resolution. If it holds a wound, it will keep creating situations that mirror that wound, hoping that this time it will end differently. But without awareness, it never does. Instead, the person relives the same pain under different names, in different places, with different faces. They don't realize they're not just choosing a partner. They're choosing their own shadow, again and again. This doesn't just happen in love. A man who was ridiculed as a child for speaking up might grow into an adult who avoids attention at all costs. He chooses safe jobs, stays quiet in meetings, keeps his opinions to himself. It looks like humility. But if you listen closely, it's fear disguised as personality. Jung would say that until this man confronts the shadow of shame and fear inside him, he's not truly living by choice. He's living by avoidance. And avoidance, over time, becomes a prison. Even your daily habits carry traces of the unconscious. Why do you procrastinate on certain things, but not others? Why do you sabotage yourself right before success? Why do you feel unworthy of peace, rest, or joy? These aren't quirks. They're the shadow speaking. Jung said that the unconscious will often withhold what you want most, not to punish you, but because it believes you're not ready for it. And if you've spent your life avoiding the truth of who you are, the shadow will make sure you keep avoiding the things that would expose it. The most dangerous thing about the unconscious is that it can masquerade as reason. It can convince you that staying small is smart, that avoiding intimacy is wise, that abandoning your dreams is practical. And you'll believe it, because it will sound like your own voice. But it's not. It's the voice of a part of you that was formed long before you had the chance to choose. It might be the voice of a scared child, trying to keep you safe in a world that isn't dangerous anymore. It might be the voice of a parent, teacher, or early authority figure, echoing in your mind decades later. Either way, it's not your voice, and yet it will speak for you until you decide to speak for yourself. Jung knew this was why so many people live lives that feel hollow. They may have careers, families, routines, but underneath it all, there's a quiet dissatisfaction, a feeling that something is missing, a sense that they're not quite where they're supposed to be. And they're right. They're not. Because they've built a life on top of the unconscious instead of in partnership with it. They've obeyed the shadow without ever looking it in the eye. Here's the cruel part. The shadow doesn't just influence your choices. It influences the meaning you attach to them. Two people can go through the same event and walk away with completely different stories. One sees it as proof they're unlucky. The other sees it as proof they're powerful. What's the difference? Not the event, the unconscious interpretation of it. This means that the shadow can turn opportunities into threats in your mind. It can turn compliments into suspicion. It can turn love into danger. You might have everything you once prayed for and still feel empty, because the part of you that runs the show doesn't believe you deserve it. Jung believed that the only way out of this trap was to drag the shadow into the light. But this is not the romantic self-discovery you see in books and movies. It's not just learning your personality type or identifying your strengths. It's staring directly at the parts of yourself you would rather bury forever. It's admitting that you are not purely the good person you want others to see. It's recognizing the envy, the pride, the bitterness, the cruelty, and accepting that they're yours, not so you can act on them, but so you can stop pretending they're not there. Because every part of you that you deny doesn't disappear, it hides. And from hiding, it has more power than you can imagine. Every day you live without knowing this secret, the shadow will continue its quiet work. It will keep steering you toward the same kinds of pain. It will keep choosing for you. It will keep you small, predictable, and safe. Safe enough to never grow. Jung never spoke this truth in public for one reason. Most people aren't ready to give up the comfort of their illusions. But if you've felt that gnawing sense that something inside you is unclaimed, if you've noticed the same patterns haunting your life, if you've wondered why you keep ending up where you swore you'd never return, it's because the part of you running the show has never been seen. And it will keep playing its part until you stop the act. The question is, will you choose to meet your shadow willingly? Or will you wait until it forces its way into your life in ways you can't ignore? Most people live their entire lives without ever truly meeting themselves. They meet the version they've been told to be. The polite mask, the adaptable role, the socially acceptable identity. But the real meeting, the one Carl Jung dedicated his life to, is far rarer and far more uncomfortable. Because when you meet your shadow, you don't just see what's beautiful about you. You see what's broken. You see what's selfish. You see the parts of yourself you've sworn never to admit. And this is where most people turn away. They say, "I don't want to think about that." They distract themselves with work, entertainment, relationships, anything to keep from hearing the voice that lives beneath the noise. But the shadow waits. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to. Because every year you ignore it, it grows more precise in its influence. It learns exactly which buttons to press to make you react. It learns exactly what kind of people to put in your path to repeat old pain. It learns how to make you believe it's not there. Jung's unspoken truth was that the shadow will keep you in this loop until you choose the harder path. Awareness. Awareness isn't just knowing you have a shadow. It's observing it in real time. It's noticing the moment your jealousy spikes and asking why. It's catching yourself when you lie, even a harmless lie, and asking what you were afraid to reveal. It's feeling the anger rise in your chest and tracing it back to the moment it first took root in your life. This is the work Jung called individuation, the process of integrating every part of yourself, even the ones you'd rather deny. When you begin this work, the first thing you'll feel is resistance. The shadow is clever. It will whisper, "You don't need this. You're fine as you are." It will remind you of all the ways you've already improved yourself. It will tell you that digging deeper is dangerous, that people will think less of you if they see who you really are. And if that doesn't work, it will distract you. Suddenly, you'll remember 10 other things you have to do. You'll scroll, binge watch, call someone, clean the house, anything, but sit in silence with your own mind. This is not a failure. It's proof you're getting close. Jung understood that the moment you stop running from the shadow is the moment it starts to lose its grip. Because the shadow thrives in darkness. It weakens in the light. Light doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean excusing your worst impulses. It means acknowledging them, owning them, taking responsibility for them. When you do that, something unexpected happens. You gain a kind of strength that can't be faked. Because now, you know your full capacity. You know the heights you can reach and the depths you can sink to. And that makes you dangerous in the best possible way. Not dangerous to others, dangerous to the illusions that once kept you small. This is why Jung saw shadow work as liberation. You stop being moved by invisible strings. You stop replaying the same pain. You stop mistaking your wounds for your identity. Instead, you begin to act with conscious choice. You see a pattern forming, and you can break it before it consumes you. You feel an old trigger rise, and you can decide whether to let it speak or let it pass. And this choice, to respond instead of react, is the very thing the shadow never wanted you to have. But here's the cost. When you integrate your shadow, you lose certain comforts. You lose the ability to blame others for everything. You lose the easy story of being a victim of fate. You lose the parts of your identity that were built on self-deception. And for many, that loss feels unbearable. Because now, you are responsible. You are aware. You can't unsee the truth. That's why Jung didn't hand this secret to everyone. He knew that awareness without action turns into despair. It's not enough to see the shadow. You must work with it, learn from it, integrate it. So how do you start? Begin small. Notice the people who irritate you the most. They are mirrors. Ask yourself what you see in them that you deny in yourself. Pay attention to the situations you keep finding yourself in. They are clues. Ask yourself what old story you're replaying and why. And when you feel an emotion you can't explain, don't push it away. Sit with it. Follow it. Ask what it's trying to protect you from. These moments are where the shadow shows its face. And if you can meet it without turning away, you begin to reclaim the power it's been holding for years. The final stage, the one Jung hinted at but rarely described in detail, is when the shadow becomes an ally. When you've seen it enough, listened to it enough, learned from it enough, it stops needing to sabotage you. It stops hiding. It joins you. And in that moment, you become whole. Not perfect, not without flaw, but whole. And wholeness is what the unconscious was guiding you toward all along. Even through the mistakes, the failures, the repeated pain. Most people will never get here. They will live as fragments, wearing masks, letting the unseen parts of themselves call the shots. They will keep blaming fate, luck, or other people for the life they never claimed. But you, if you've made it this far, you know the truth now. You know the secret Jung never spoke outright. And you know that from this moment on, your life will either be a conscious creation or an unconscious repetition. The choice is yours. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you ready to meet yourself, all of yourself, or will you let your shadow keep writing your story? Comment your answer below. I'll be reading every single one. If this video brought you clarity, like it so more people can discover this truth. Subscribe for more. Carl Jung psychology that will change the way you see yourself forever. And if you want to support the channel, consider sending a super thanks. It means more than you know.